Hello, and welcome to the latest in the series of live streams all about Carbon Hack 2024, the upcoming virtual hackathon from the Green Software Foundation. As a quick reminder, these sessions are here to really help you prepare for the hackathon and give you an opportunity to raise any questions. And this is my first time presenting. If there's anybody watching this who could just drop something in the chat to know that you are hearing me, you can see me, things are working, that would be much appreciated because it's a brand new tool for me today. But who am I? And I am obviously not Asim. So my name is Russ and I'm a senior project manager here at the GSF. And I'm standing in for Asim as he's been otherwise occupied. But my role at the GSF is officially I work with our community working group and some of our learning and knowledge projects. But in relation to the hackathon, I really manage behind the scenes the platform. So you might see my name on some of the documents and some of the setup on our Carbon Hack repository. But today, feel free to ask me any questions you have about the process, about the platform, and about how the hackathon works. Thankfully, today I won't be flying solo. I am joined by Joseph Cook from the Impact Framework team, who will be able to answer all your technical questions. So, hey, Joseph, how are you doing today?
Hi. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Joseph. I'm a project manager and core developer on the Impact Framework team. So you'll see me all over the GitHub, all over the discussion boards, looking at all of the project proposals, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully I can answer some of your IF related questions today.
Good, brilliant, thank you. I'm glad not to be flying solo when we first try this.
Yeah.
And I've just seen some messages coming in to say, yes, you can hear and see us. Wonderful, good. I pressed all the right buttons. So as always, it's wonderful to have you all with us on this stream today. So we're going live across LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and the StreamYard tool. So if you put anything in the comment box on any of those platforms, we should be able to see them, and we'll try our best to respond to any comments or questions that come up. So please do ask any questions you have about the hackathon, about the framework. We'll keep an eye on the chat and we'll try our best to answer any questions that arise. So what we're going to be doing today. So today is going to follow a similar format to the previous sessions, except that this week we've got some incredibly exciting news. Since we launched the hackathon last week for project registrations, we've now had our first few project registrations. So we're going to keep today's agenda a little different to the previous one. So we'll start with a very brief overview of the Carbon Hack itself for anybody who's new to this call, new to the Carbon Hack. We'll then spend some time looking at these proposals. So we'll have a look at them in a little bit more detail. We're here sort of Joseph's thoughts and feedbacks, and we'll dig into sort of some of the sort of initial projects that are coming in. And then we'll look at impact framework. So there's a few changes, a few developments. So again, we'll use that as an opportunity for Joseph to share. So a little bit of update about the impact framework. And then finally, we'll finish with a brief recap of the platform itself. So hopefully we are all ready to go. Let me make a start. So I'm going to start with, as I said, just giving a quick overview of the hackathon itself for anybody who's new to this call. We've been through this a few times on previous streams, so I don't think it's going to be anything new. So I will do my best to keep it brief. And hopefully, if I press that button, you can now see a slide deck. Yeah, I can see Joseph nodding, so hopefully I did press the right button. So good. So welcome to, as I mentioned, this is a prep and Q&A session for Carbon Hack 2024. So this is our virtual hackathon from the Green Software Foundation. So the hacking itself is going to be taking place from the 18th of March through to the 8th of April. And this hackathon is all about measurement. So this year we're going to be focusing on measurement and measuring software emissions. Specifically, we're going to be looking at measurement using an open source project within the GSF called the Impact Framework. And then those who are not familiar with the Impact Framework is an incubation project in the open source working group of the GSF. And Joseph is a sort of the PM and one of the lead devs on that project, so he has a wealth of knowledge and experience working with this tool. If you want to know more, you want to find out all the juicy details, simply go to if.greensoftware.foundation, and that'll point you to the documentation and the repository where you can go and find out everything you might want to know about the impact framework. What about the hack? So as I mentioned, the hack's our sort of fully virtual hackathon running across March and April. And everything for the hack happens to a GitHub repository. So let me just share the link to that. Hopefully you can now see the link. Here we go. So the experience is all actually run through a GitHub repository. So if you follow that link, you'll find a repo where we're storing all the information about the hackathon. You can look at the projects that are being raised. You can look at the discussions that are happening. So this is where we're centralizing all of the activity this year. In terms of participating in hackathon, you can go solo, you can work in a team. It's up to you to decide how to how to organize yourself. But there are four main sort of areas in which we're encouraging contributions. So we're looking at anything purely beyond carbon. So whether that's waste, water, we're looking at any sort of measurement beyond carbon. We're looking for contributions that build on top of impact framework, so building plugins. We're looking for contributions that enhance impact framework itself, so commit to the actual core code base. And finally, we're looking for anything that creates content to help sort of extend the knowledge, deliver training, or really support the adoption of the impact framework. And all of these prizes have been, here we go, so there we go, we can see what the details of the prizes. So all of these prizes are available to any of the projects, and so we simply require submissions before the closing date of the hackathon, and there'll be a judging panel. So not only do we have the four categories, we're also looking to really extend out the recognition of contributions from certain demographics. So this year we're going to be having an under 18s prize, so where the whole team is under the age of 18 at registration, and we'll also have a best undergraduate prize for those in full-time education. And those two prizes will be drawn across from the other main categories. Now, these prizes aren't, well, we wouldn't be able to offer these prizes without our sponsors. So we're very thankful for our sponsors. So far, we have a few sponsors. We have Amadeus, we have Nedbank South Africa, we have Sentry Software, and IMDA Singapore. So they are supporting the hackathon, they are sponsoring, and this is how we're funding our prizes. So really, if you are interested in supporting this hackathon and sponsoring, we have a very simple offering this year. So for $5,000, you will get the opportunity to sit on the judging panel, and you will get promotion throughout the event. So not only is this a chance to sort of get that promotion, but it's really an opportunity to share your motivations around green software and also gather input from the whole hackathon community on the challenges you are facing. So we expect future live streams with feature sponsors where they will be able to come and talk about their motivations and their challenges. So we're really looking for anybody who has an interest in this area and would like to support this hackathon. If you visit the main hackathon website, which I'm just seeing if I have a link for. I do not. So if you go to hack.greensoftware.foundation, you'll find all the details about sponsorship, including a sponsorship prospectus. So important dates to keep in mind for the hackathon. So registration opened last week on the 22nd. Hacking will officially start on the 18th of March. And the reason we're setting that line in the sand is due to impact framework. So at the moment, it's in sort of very active development. I think you could probably say, Joseph. It's changing quite regularly. And one of the reasons we've set the 18th of March as a sort of start date is it means we'll have a code freeze in place before that date. So it means you'll have some certainty that the sort of ground isn't going to change underneath you. The interfaces won't change. So obviously, if you want to start and quickly mention our previous hackathon. So we were looking or expecting, we're hoping, shall I say, actually, a similar level of activity and participation. In our previous hackathon, we had over 400 participants and we had 51 project submissions. So we're still very early days for this hackathon, but we hope there'll be significant growing interest over the next few weeks. So if you are interested in sponsoring Carbon Hack and want to get involved, as I said, visit the main website. So follow the short link or hack.greensoftware.foundation or drop an email to that address to get the full sponsorship package. And that is it. I hope that covers all of the sort of nitty-gritty information about this year's Carbon Hack. Any questions about the hack itself, please do drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. I'll give you just a moment to do that. Welcome back, Joseph. Did your internet cut out?
Thanks. Yeah, I think my VPN died for a minute there, and then you were mid-flow, so you can add me back to the stage. I was here.
I suddenly noticed you disappeared. Good. Okay. Can't see any questions coming in. So why don't we move on to the next section? So the exciting part of today's stream. So looking at the project proposals that we received so far for the hackathon. So Joseph, are you okay to drive this section? I'll let you take over the sharing, and we'll have a look. We've had 4 submissions so far. Our 4th came in about half an hour ago, and they all look quite broad in areas. And we've got 3 plugins and 1 content.
Yeah, there's some really, really interesting stuff here. There's 4 things that are in this. This is the hack repository, by the way. This is the Green Software Foundation /hack. There's 4 proposals here as issues, and then we've also got a discussion board where there's a lot of back and forth happening between potential hackathon participants and the IF team. So we can hop over there in a minute as well and see what's going on over there. But we can take a quick glance at some of these proposals. The first one that's come in is this Azure Sustainability API plugin. I'm really honestly only reading this for the first time, kind of in real time. But we already have an Azure metrics importer, but this is different because this is using the Microsoft Sustainability API to directly retrieve environmental metrics from an Azure resource. What we can currently do is actually quite limited. Our Azure exporter only allows you to retrieve usage metrics from a running virtual machine. And then you have to use other plugins in the IF pipeline to turn those usage metrics into environmental impacts, and only for virtual machines. So what this potentially would allow you to do is much, much more granular explorations, calculations on the impacts that you're having by running stuff on Azure, and not just for virtual machines, but for a bunch of other stuff too, and do a lot more of those calculations kind of server side, if you will, rather than doing them inside the IF. So I think if we can, if we can make this work, this would be a really fantastic addition to the IF. So really, I'm excited about this. I haven't responded to this yet because I only just saw it very recently. I haven't quite digested it, but I'm excited to see it. There are a couple of questions to be answered here. Can I write the plugin in C#.net? Does the build need to be a DLL executable or something else? What does the interface between IF and a plugin look like, and what kind of data would be most beneficial to IF? So, okay, ideally, plugins are written in TypeScript. That's the easiest case. That's the happy path, because IF is written in TypeScript, and that just makes everything very easy. But we do provide some functionality that allows you to write plugins in any language and execute them using a shell. And the way that we do that is to have a shell model written in TypeScript that spawns a shell and then executes some arbitrary code in the shell and then pipes the output back into the IF. There are also some proposals in the discussion board to make that process a little easier. So there are other hackathon projects potentially that are going to refine the process for using non-TypeScript models, non-TypeScript plugins, sorry, with the IF. So that's kind of interesting. But right now, the basic functionality is that you would use our shell model plugin to execute your model kind of outside of the IF and pipe the data back in. So yes, you can. Basically, the short answer is yes. Yes, you can. And hopefully after the hackathon, that'll be even easier because there are people interested in making that process better, making it more streamlined and more kind of IF native to do that. Secondly, does the build need to be a DLL executable or something else? Well, it's running in a shell. So basically, what you actually provide to the shell model is a command to run in the shell and a path to the file that you want to execute. So that could be it could be an executable. It could also be something like a Python script, and the path that you provide to the shell model is Python, and then the path to your Python file. It's it kind of doesn't matter in a lot of ways. There's a lot of flexibility with IF as long as you're piping back data in the right format and conforming to the interfaces of the IF, then basically it's going to work. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility here, and we're always really happy to back and forth on the GitHub issue, in the comments or on the discussion board. If there's any confusion about how that process is going to work, we can definitely help walk you through it. Is there any questions coming about that? Do you have any, Russ?
I had a question. I haven't seen any yet on that one specifically. But I had a question about the Azure sustainability, or the Microsoft Sustainability API. How well developed and how well adopted is that? Sounds interesting that they have an API already.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I've seen this for the first time just very recently, and I did quickly get the docs up on go to the Microsoft docs to see if I can learn a little bit more about it. Now it looks like it's very recent. It's very recent edition. 17th of January 24 here is the docs last updated, and it looks like it's pretty richly featured. I think it looks definitely like a substantial upgrade from what we're currently doing with the usage metrics API. So I'm really excited to dive into this myself. I'm also double excited that someone else is going to do it and submit it as a hackathon project. So this is it. Yeah. So if anyone else is kind of interested in this as well, this is the link to the docs is here. It's on learn.microsoft.com. But Googling the sustainability API, I'm sure will get you there. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled on this, and we'll see how this develops. But this seems to me like a very high potential project that could be really, really impactful.
Yeah, I can imagine this could be incredible, as you say, incredibly impactful and powerful if there was this sort of integrations for all of the cloud providers. If they offered something similar, suddenly unlock a whole new world, as you say, outside of the VMs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is one thing. There are some discussions on this on the discussion board, but having some data importers for other cloud providers would be a big unlock for IF. Mm-hmm. Right now we're quite constrained because we only have a data importer for Azure, and like I said, at the moment it's only virtual machines. So that's really quite a narrow window into all of what's happening on the cloud. So an ideal thing for someone to build would be an alternative. The same thing for an alternative provider.
Good. So flag potential projects there. If anybody's listening, they're looking for a project. This is certainly something that sounds worth exploring.
Yeah. There's a discussion open for it on the board, I believe. Let's see, somewhere down here.
Metrics importer, is that the one down the
Yeah.
bottom?
Where are we looking? Oh yeah, here. A metrics importer for non-Azure cloud platforms. Yeah, so it's on the board. Anyone's interested in that, jump into the discussion on there. More than welcome.
Well,
So next on this list is a Kepler model for Kubernetes clusters. If we could get this, that would just be fantastic. I'd be so happy to see this. I don't know anything
what
about
is Kepler?
Kubernetes really.
I was going to say, for anybody not aware, yeah.
Kepler's a command line tool that people can use to do carbon calculations. So if we could pull that into IF as a component, it'd be very, very powerful. Kepler's got some really low level access to really low level access to the hardware that something's being run on. It can do very granular calculations that would really enrich the IF pipeline. So I think if this could work, it would be very cool, very, very cool. And also Kubernetes, we don't have any functionality for Kubernetes whatsoever in IF at the moment. We don't have any plugins that deal with it. It's a very obvious gap with, again, very, very high impact, because these big applications that are operating at a lot of scale use Kubernetes to spin up loads of instances and serve huge volumes of traffic. So it's an obvious gap. If we want IF to really do sort of impactful measurements for big scale projects, then we've got to have some plugins for Kubernetes. And this is really interesting because this combines two of the big in the sort of environmental space, in the impact assessment space. Kepler is a big name. In the cloud computing world, Kubernetes is obviously a big name. Two quite fundamental things, and bringing them together and integrating them into the IF, it's a good idea. It's a really good idea.
So what I've seen from Kepler is also one of the things, it's real time, isn't it? Sort of, if you've got the right hardware support in your underlying infrastructure, if you're hosting on bare metal, for example, with the right underlying infrastructure, you get real time energy consumption metrics. It's not estimated. I think they have models for estimating if you don't have that, but I guess again to go to real time energy consumption, it's one of the best things out there.
Yeah. It's a big unlock for Impact Framework for sure. So there's a couple of things in here, some more details that we can dig into for a minute. I was really just riffing on the title of the thing there and getting excited, but we can actually look about what they're proposing to build. We're thinking of building a pipeline with the following steps: a Prometheus importer plugin to pull Kepler metrics from a Prometheus server, a Kepler plugin to analyze the Prometheus metrics and normalize the data to consume by the SCI models, then the SCI models, and then a Prometheus metrics publisher plugin to push the SCI scores back to Prometheus. I mean, it makes sense. That round trip from Prometheus back to Prometheus with the IF in the middle makes a lot of sense. And again, this is not the first time that people have suggested Prometheus integrations. There's here on the discussion board, there's an end-to-end integration with Prometheus proposed. So these things are going to get easier. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of synergies. There's a lot of overlapping Venn diagrams between the things that people want and the ideas that people are having, and it's very cool. It's very exciting. There's a lot of enthusiasm for common themes.
Yeah, I guess these are sort of some of the standard building blocks of a cloud native approach as well. You're talking about Kubernetes, you're talking about Prometheus and Grafana. I mean, these are if you're building that sort of infrastructure, these are the toolings you're going to be using anyway. So it should be a fairly low lift to have that integration with IF.
Yeah. I hope so. So the questions to be answered: what programming languages can we use, and are there any generic models we can build on? So again, we kind of covered this in the last one, but technically you can use any programming language because you can use our shell model to execute something in the shell and pipe the data back into the IF. the happy path, the easy path, the path of least resistance is to write your plugin in TypeScript, because then it's kind of like an IF native thing, and it's much easier to do the integration, less moving parts, if you like. So if you're comfortable with TypeScript, that's the easy way. But you can basically use whatever programming language you like and execute it via our shell model. And these people who have proposed this are looking for participants too. So if anyone's listening and they're interested in this and they've got skills that are relevant, then this might be a good place to come in and add throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the issues, all of the project proposals with their recruiting label on, I've been tagging up, as they say, looking for additional contributors.
Okay, great. The other question was, are there generic models? Well, not really at the moment. E.g. for Prometheus or Kubernetes, they ask. Well, the Kubernetes, we don't really have anything for Kubernetes right now. There's no generic model for that right now. And Prometheus also, we're kind of hoping that someone builds that in the hackathon. What we do have is a CSV exporter, which is being used at the moment as an intermediary to push data into Grafana. So there is the sort of generic. What we currently use is YAML files as to pass our input and output, but there is also the option to turn that YAML output into CSV to be a little bit more generalized, so that you can pipe that into Grafana, Prometheus, or whatever else. But yeah, there was in the discussion board, there's the end-to-end integration with Prometheus suggested. So someone's going to work on that. That's another kind of obvious gap someone should fill. I guess that also kind of naturally generalizes into end-to-end integration with Grafana or whatever else you kind of want to use on the back end. I think it makes a lot of sense to have general plugins for those. But we don't yet, so please come and build them. Is there any questions on that one, or anything that we've been talking about there?
No, nothing. A couple of questions just on the hackathon itself. I'll just briefly share just so everybody hears the answer. But is the deadline? We mentioned some of the dates. The deadline is 23:59 on the 7th of April. So the hacking officially closes on the 8th of April. So you need to have your submission in for judging by that time. But you can register your project, you can raise your ticket and then register on the website at any point. It doesn't have to be before the hacking starts. And the other one was just a very quick one. Is there a Slack channel where we can find teammates? No, everything is on the GitHub repository, which I'll briefly demo towards the end of this call. But everything is on that repository. And as we mentioned, project proposals with the recruiting label on there will show you which ones are looking for teammates. Or there is a discussion forum called Matchmaking. If you have a set of skills you'd like to offer up to the community. So everything's on the GitHub repository. Yeah. I'll let you know if anything comes up on the projects.
Yep. Okay. So next one we've got on here is this called Black is Green. This is really interesting. This is about monitors, displays, and whether we can generate a carbon intensity for displaying images on different monitors. But this is one that this actually came in a few days ago, so we've had a bit of back and forth on this already. Asim and I both thought this was a really interesting idea. I never would have thought of this. Absolutely no way. No. So when it came in, I was like, wow, that's a really interesting idea. We've dug into it a little bit to see if we can help from the IF side, try and define how this might work and do a bit of high level troubleshooting. And to me this seems like a viable thing and would be a really interesting use case for the IF. Certainly not the original kind of intended use case, but a really good one nevertheless. And I think the crux of this is the SciM model. The SciM model is an IF, one of the IF standard models that measures the embodied emissions. So this is the amount of carbon that is emitted when a component is manufactured and when it's disposed. And what I think that the challenge with this one is going to be is working out how much of the lifespan of the component to allocate to an application displaying images on a particular monitor. Because if you're just displaying an image once, it's going to be like a few seconds in the 5-year lifespan of the component. But if this is something, this is dedicated for just this particular application, and it's going to just run that 100% of the time for its entire lifespan, it's very, very different carbon intensity at the end.
That's it. Kiosk devices and things like that with very consistent interfaces, as you say, they're constantly displaying very similar structures and very similar sort of assets.
Yeah. I'd like to see someone apply this model to that Las Vegas dome.
Oh yeah.
Might have quite a large number. But very cool idea. I think it's going to be very viable. I think it's going to be a question of decision making really, and making the input values realistic, and having some kind of set of heuristics for how you handle the time allocated versus the total lifespan for the component. I think that's going to be the key to this, personally. But we'll see. I hope this person decides this is a good thing to work on and goes for it, because as far as I can tell, this is a good use case for the IF, and it fits in nicely, slots in nicely to our existing kind of functionality. So I'm hopeful for this. I hope it comes off.
Yeah.
There's no real outstanding questions at the moment. There's been quite a lot of back and forth on this one already, and we're really kind of getting into the weeds of the implementation details now. So I hope to see this from the hackathon. I really hope to see this get submitted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last one we've got down here is this one is about documentation and sort of public-facing materials about the IF, which overall is a good idea. We want people to see this thing. We want people to read about it. We want people to learn about it. We want good clear documentation and lots of blog posts and videos and all other kinds of content out there about the impact framework. So we strongly support this. I think probably this might need a little more scoping. Like it might need to be a little bit more tightly specced before it goes through to the hackathon. But this is also a project that's recruiting members. So if you have ideas for good content, good documentation, and other things, then I'm sure that the opening poster will be receptive. They're looking to build a team, so have a think and maybe get involved, participate in the discussion here on the GitHub and see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a very interesting project title. I'd certainly like to know more.
Yeah, it's a strong name for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where we're at with submissions. Those are the 4 on the issues board right now. We can take a quick scan through the discussions as well. Excuse me for a second, I cough. Thanks. So there's quite a lot of activity going on this discussion board at the moment, actually. Certainly Aston and I have been excited every time something's been raised and jumped in to try and participate in the discussion as wholeheartedly as possible. Particularly this top issue has had a lot of comments. We've all been going back and forth quite a lot. You can see there's some fairly extensive comments going on, some fairly comprehensive responses here. And, we really got into the weeds on this one. This is about framework improvements, and this was especially interesting because someone has come and identified some issues that we've also identified internally about how we represent certain things like parameter naming and unit conventions inside the IF that we're all on board that we need to upgrade. So it's kind of it's nice to have confirmation from outside the IF team that we're thinking along the right lines, and that we've identified some frictions that need to be handled. And I think I'm sure that Aston would agree, but through this conversation, this has definitely helped us to firstly refine the way that we're thinking about this, and come up with a much tighter spec for how we're going to resolve the units issue. We're referring to as the units issue. I can explain a little bit more about the background to that in a minute, but also to try and pull out some good hackathon projects from this discussion, because as we've been going back and forth on it, definitely seen some things as, okay, this thing's kind of dealt with, this thing may be a little ambiguous about whether this is going to work or not, but this thing, yes, this is definitely a viable hackathon project. It's nice and tightly constrained and discrete, and we'll make it perfectly. One of those is the debugging. So providing a better developer experience around debugging impact framework. So that might include direct links to specific lines in the YAML, in the manifest file where something's broken, because we've already seen people with manifest files that are,
huge.
Yeah, megabytes and megabytes, 400,000 lines or 500,000 lines or something like that. And in that case, there's lots of naming collisions. There's lots of places where something occurs 1,000 times in a manifest file, and we just point to the name. We don't know where in the manifest file that bug actually occurred, so it's quite hard to trace back. So we do a reasonable job at the moment, but for using the IF at scale, there's definitely some fairly substantial improvements that can be made to the developer experience, particularly around the debugging, debugging the CLI and debugging the manifest file. And we do have our sort of custom errors, and we try to be very specific about our error messaging and that sort of thing, but there's definitely a bit more that we could do. There's been some really interesting proposals around sort of static analysis of the manifest file. So you could even do something where before you execute your computation pipeline, you're auditing the inputs and outputs from each model, and then making some decisions, almost like compiler checking the manifest file before it runs. You're making decisions about where you can do some sort of garbage collection and chuck some of the input data that's no longer needed, that's already been passed through the model pipeline, isn't going to be needed again. You can maybe discard that from memory and just make some optimizations by doing some almost runtime compiler checking optimization sort of type stuff. And the structure of a manifest file lends itself to that really, really well, especially because we've got this explicit model pipeline that shows precisely how the manifest file is going to execute, and what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what's the flow of information between each component. It's all there, audited, documented in the manifest file. So it lends itself really, really well to this kind of a static compiler analysis. So and we don't do that yet. We don't do anything like that at the moment. So it's there's definitely an opportunity to explore that space. I think that's very fertile ground for hackathon projects that could be really, really impactful. And that's, whereas everything else we've talked about has been creating a model plugin, this is actually working on the framework itself and building some new features or optimizations or refinements into the impact framework, which is a different thing, but also valuable.
It sounds like there's some, as you said, there's some obviously concrete needs here as well for potential hackathon projects that could be very well received, because they're sort of an issue that's affecting sort of all the users. Where would somebody go to find out more about some of these things? Because you said we obviously have a discussion thread going on for framework improvements, but what about if somebody wants to go and look at what's happening within IF and look at some of these other sort of discussions that are happening around the framework itself?
Yeah. Well, in that case, you need to head over to our board, and we are at we're Green Software Foundation /IF. And I'll just go there now so you can see. We have our own issue board.
Yeah.
With these are intended to be things that we're going to work on as a core team.
These are all the core team issues.
Yeah, this is. I mean, what you're looking at now is the global issue board. This isn't organized into tickets or sprints. So we have a sort of agile Kanban and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what you're looking at now is just the unfiltered chronological order global issue board. But we do, and these are things that we are going to work on, but we do also have tags for good first issue and help wanted. And these are things where we think we do want this, we do need this, but we haven't got time right now. It would be amazing if someone from the community wanted to pick this up.
Yeah.
And we think it's relatively self-contained, is relatively easy to onboard into. We've got good documentation around it, or it's very well scoped. This is a good thing for someone to work on. So a good example, in fact, this is a great example because someone actually has picked this up today. The time sync model uses a deprecated library to handle time conversions right now. And so that this project, Moment.js, is what we use to convert seconds to minutes, minutes to second, and all of that kind of stuff. But it's in maintenance mode now. And the Moment.js doc suggests that you should stop using it and start using an actively developed alternative. So we know this. It's on the roadmap, but we put the help wanted tag on. Someone actually came along and said, "Hey, I'd like to work on this as a warm up for the hackathon." Fantastic.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Absolutely perfect. That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that's just what we want.
If you want to get, I guess, familiar with the impact framework, these are a good way of doing it. These small little sort of housekeeping-y sort of tasks that you could pick up, and you get familiar with the framework before you move on to building something bigger on top of it or extending it significantly. So yeah,
it's a great,
really useful to know.
It's a great way to do that. It's a good way to onboard. It's a good way to start discussion with us, and we're always happy to chat in the comments on here, on comments on an issue or something. If someone's interested in working on something and need a bit of scaffolding or support or answer some questions or whatever, I would just say be bold and chat to us in the comments. We're happy when people want to participate. It's a very open door.
Yeah. And so while we're here, while we're looking at, I guess, impact framework itself, has there been any sort of recent significant developments or any changes or improvements to the framework that I guess would be useful for people to know? Because obviously we talked about the 18th of March being a sort of code freeze where there's a degree of stability and some guarantees about things not changing. But obviously I know you are, as you can see, actively working on this at the moment.
Yeah, very, very actively working on it right now. The code freeze deadline is looming, and we do have some fairly substantial changes to make between now and then. I can go through what some of those are in a second, but just it's worth highlighting for hackathon participants that, of course, you can start working whenever you want, but it's things are going to change. And there might even be some breaking changes on the horizon between now and the hackathon. So the idea of the code freeze is to get all those things out of the way so that you have a very stable, reliable base to build on. But there are some substantial dev tasks on us between now and then that are going to make the developer experience better and easier. But if you start building now, you might find that you need to then go back and refactor some stuff or change some stuff to conform with the latest version. So I would say over the next couple of weeks, there's likely to be some fairly substantial changes. So to go back to your original question, anyway, what are we working on? Well, one of the main things is that we've formally defined our coding best practices across our repositories, and we've been back and refactored all of the early code that we wrote right at the start of the Impact Framework project to conform to it. And the idea with that is, firstly, it's good to be consistent and to conform to best practices. Of course it is. But with the hackathon looming, we want all of that code, all of the IF model plugin code, all of the impact framework code, and all of the IF unofficial plugins code, all to be good templates for people to use to build on top of. So we want everything. We want to just be able to go into one of the IF repos. Doesn't matter where you are. Doesn't matter where you start. You just pick some code, and you know that it's a good. You can build off it. You can use it as a guide. You can use it as a template because it's all conformant to what we expect, and that makes it more likely that you'll spin up faster into your project.
Yeah.
And if not everyone will, but if you're aiming to get code merged into one of the IF repositories as a result of the hackathon, and it makes it much more likely that that will happen if you're already conformant to our coding guidelines. So we've put a lot of work into refactoring across all of the IF repositories in the last couple of sprints. The other thing is we've got a couple of new features that we're trying to ship. One is the aggregation across the graph. It's turned out to be quite a lot more complicated than we originally anticipated, but we're on top of it and it's going to ship very soon. And the idea here is that while you have a graph in your manifest file that covers lots of different components, each one giving you a time series of usage, and by the end of your pipeline, a time series of different environmental impacts for each component, you should be able to sum those up or average them up, depending on what sort of metric it is, but aggregate them across the entire graph so that every level, every grouping, every level in your graph, in your manifest file, you have one representative time series of all the components underneath. So every parent has one single time series representing the aggregate of all of its children, all the way up to the root of the graph. So that's your global impact for all of the components in your application, which is obviously a useful feature if you want to know how much environmental impact you're having across your whole stack.
Yeah.
So that's on the way. That's the next feature to ship. We're also actively working on a solution to the units problem that I alluded to earlier. And now the units problem it's not really a big problem, but it's a bit of friction in the system at the moment, especially for plugin developers, because at the moment our parameter naming and the associated units with each parameter is defined in a single file. And that file is found in the IF source repository. It's called units.yaml. And what that means is that if you want to create a model plugin with some new parameters that are never before seen in the impact framework, which is exactly what we want, that's the whole point of the hackathon, you also will have to raise a pull request in the IF repository to update that units.yaml file, which is not what we want people to have to do.
Yeah, I see.
So right now we're implementing a change that just abstracts all of that complexity away, and you won't have to do that anymore. So that's the feature that will ship immediately after the aggregation feature is a solution to the units problem. It's going to be a process of allowing you to update certain parameters by redefining them in the manifest file. Yeah, and then having like an override mode where you can provide your own file if you prefer, but still being able to benefit from the standards that we've discussed and have got consensus over that we use as defaults. Because in a lot of ways, the most valuable thing that we're providing as the impact framework is the set of standards and norms for doing the calculations and the right units, the right parameter names, and the right this, that, and the other right ways to aggregate things. So we want people to have that scaffolding. These are like the safeguards that we're providing as impact framework. These standards are the guardrails to make sure that things are processed correctly and the right outputs are generated from the right inputs and what have you. Yeah. On the other hand, we don't want to limit people's creative freedom. So we've kind of got to find a solution that satisfies both potential users, your advanced user that wants complete control over everything, and also your normal user, the majority of the users that do want to use the canonical set of parameters and values. So
yeah, that's it. That's, as you said, this is really what we encourage is innovation around the framework. So you want some safe defaults, but you want people with the ability to extend. So
exactly. So that is potentially that's one of the big changes that will influence how people build model plugins. Now it's obviously going to make making model plugins much easier when this is implemented. But if you build one today, you might have to change it after that change is implemented in the IF. It should be a relatively small change, but still it might be a breaking change for models that exist today.
Do you know how is there an expectation of how close to the 18th of March you're talking about that code freeze? As a question came in about what day, and I'm assuming 23:59 on the 17th of March.
Oh well, I hope not. I hope not. We're really trying to front load anything that could possibly be a breaking change. Really trying to front load that as much as possible to get them out of the way as early as possible, so that anything that's being shipped close to the hackathon start is kind of not exactly cosmetic stuff, but stuff that's really not that very, very backwards compatible, not breaking anything that currently exists, and really trying to get the big stuff done first, get it out of the way, provide as stable as possible product for as long as possible. The other things.
Did I hear? I think you mentioned something about developer experience. Did I hear that you're planning to sort of revamp the documentation that currently exists for the framework as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We are midway through a complete overhaul of the documentation, really from the ground up. By the time we get to the hackathon, well, hopefully well in advance of the hackathon, the website will ship with a new structure, new pages, all kind of restructured to serve the audience better, with onboarding tutorials, with dedicated walkthroughs for all the different things that people are likely to want to do with the impact framework, with developer tutorials for how to do things like how to write a basic plugin, how to refine your plugin to make it production ready, make it more likely to be merged into one of our repositories, how to conform to the coding standards, how to write a manifest file, optimization guides, all of this kind of stuff is all going to be there in advance, well in advance of hackathon.
Great.
Well underway, and at the same time, that kind of covers the written materials, the written onboarding stuff, and the documentation. But there's going to be a whole load of video explainers and walkthrough YouTube videos and all of that kind of stuff to support it as well. Plus, obviously, these weekly live streams where we basically do the same thing but interactive, so we can live code stuff and debug people live and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of effort going into the documentation and kind of media side of things too.
And I guess the best way for people to keep up to date with that is watch the repository. I guess keep an eye on the IF repository, and as you said, we'll be announcing these improvements in these sessions, but otherwise, I guess watching the repository is probably the best way for people to stay up to date.
We'll try and, certainly with the documentation on the website, we'll try and publicize that as widely as we can, especially to hackathon participants. We'll try and announce that on the hackathon repository and what have you, because the documentation is actually in a separate repository from the IF source code. It's in IF docs. It's green software /IF docs, and all of the website documentation is all served from there. So while we're developing the documentation, we're doing it by pull request into that repository. So watching the IF repository doesn't really help in that sense. But once it ships, we'll be loud about it and make sure that's a
good reminder for those who haven't already on the Hackathon website. So hack.greensoftware.foundation. If you sign up for our newsletter, you join the mailing list around the hackathon, you'll get up to date. You'll get updates with all of these changing. We'll communicate as things develop. So you'll find on that website the ability to sign up to our mailing list, and that's a separate activity to registering your project. So if you want to stay up to date with these changes, it's probably actually, as you say, the easiest way to do it is sign up to the Hackathon newsletter.
Yep.
Great. Sounds like lots of really exciting developments happening around IF, and sort of you got a nice sort of I guess, as you say, some work ahead of you before the 18th, but things are sort of significantly improving. And I guess this has been a great activity so far for you, because as you said, you're getting this feedback from users, you're hearing what people really want. So I can't wait to see what happens through the hackathon.
Things are definitely moving quickly. I'll give you that.
Good, brilliant.
I just see a comment. Actually, I just noticed a comment in the chat here. Yes, this one. With the option to override or add, would still be good to know when something is overridden or not. The idea of whether. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with this more. this has actually been a topic of some discussion, because originally what I suggested was that you would have to toggle some kind of advanced mode or unsafe mode or something like that to override the default, so that you were flagging to anyone that was running your code that I'm choosing to override the canonical set of parameters and units, and I take responsibility for any bugs I introduce.
Here be dragons.
Yeah, basically something along those lines. So I'm fully on board with this. I think that the consensus set is a really valuable asset, that maybe the most valuable asset that exists across the IF repositories. And yes, we want people to experiment freely and be creative with how they use IF. Absolutely, it's a core principle. But at the same time, we want people to be careful if they're diverging from what's been community verified as the right way to do things. We want that to be clear and explicit. So yes, Christine, we agree wholeheartedly. We will make sure this is very clearly flagged.
Good, perfect. So I think that's all the questions about IF and the project. I'm conscious we're approaching the top of the hour, and I very quickly I'm just going to grab presenting rights, Joseph, if that's okay, because I just really want to take a moment in sort of the next few minutes just to remind people how they go about participating in the hackathon. Because sort of we've seen some of the details about the hackathon today. We obviously looked at some of the project proposals that we have, but just as a very brief reminder to become involved in the hackathon, if you want to participate in the hackathon, as we keep referring to, you'll find everything you need in the GitHub repository. So if you follow this short link or look for the hack repository in our GitHub organization, you'll find all the information you need to participate. We're using this as the central hub for the hackathon. There's no Slack, Discord, anything like that. On here, there's sort of, I guess, three main areas as we've looked at today. Projects live in our issues. So if you've got a project idea that you want to raise and you want to share with the community and get this sort of amazing level of support that Joseph's just gone through today, raise an issue. Please do raise an issue when you feel ready. We have discussions. So if you have any questions about any part of the hackathon, anything relating to any of the projects, or you're looking to find a team to join, so maybe you're looking to find a team, or you have a project idea and you're looking to recruit, we have a matchmaking section in our discussions. So please do really ask anything. Use the discussions to raise any issues that aren't already covered in our wiki. So the other sort of key thing within our repository is we've tried to build out a wiki that covers, well, what we hope are the main things you need to know about the hackathon itself. So in the wiki, you'll find a participant guide, which will talk you through the process of sort of raising a project, so putting forward a project proposal, what registration steps are required. You must, because in effect, you need to raise an issue, and then you need to go to our website and register your project when you're ready, and then submit your solution before the deadline. So the guide will talk you through all of the steps that you need to go, how you can get support during the hackathon. And then there's sort of a few other key things are featured here. We've got frequently asked questions, which hopefully tries to talk to anything that might be on your mind. And the two really most important things here, I'd say, are the prizes and judging. So you find more information about the sort of different prize categories that we have and the criteria against which we'll be judging these categories. And then the rules and terms of the hackathon itself. So please do spend some time reviewing these, looking at these. These are obviously critical to know how you go about ensuring that anything you submit for judging is going to meet all the criteria and is be eligible for the hackathon. So have a look through our wiki, have a look through the repository, and please do raise your issues, and we will continue to look at them, support you with them, help you develop your ideas. And I hope this time next week we'll have more project proposals to talk through. So in the last few seconds, I'd just like to thank you, Joseph, for your time today. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us to hear about the carbon hack. We will continue this session at the same time next week. So please do join us again next Monday at 2:30 UTC. And I think at that point, there's nothing left for me to say apart from thank you, and I wish you all happy hacking. So have a wonderful day all, and thanks very much, Joseph, and I will speak to you soon.